Feeling. Hello.
All right.
Check.
Well, let's get started. Welcome everyone to Crypto
Check.
Mondays. Topic today is the trust layer of AI from black box to transparent systems, how Web3 enables verifiable AI. I'm Rodrigo Coelho, your host today. I'm CEO of EdgeNode, and we're happy to have you here at House of Web3. Happy to host these events. So we've got here tonight with us um, Alex Fowler of Nexus, our first panelist here, and he's Chief Strategy Officer at Nexus. Alex has held leadership positions with Mozilla, Blockstream, and the Electronic Frontier Foundation, and now focuses on building the infra for a verifiable internet using zero-knowledge proofs and cryptographic systems to make AI and data more trustworthy. Welcome, Alex. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Adam Leon, who leads BD at Gear Technologies and the Vara Network. Adam's background bridges finance and blockchain growth, and he's focused on building thriving ecosystems for decentralized networks that can support the next generation of AI and Web3 applications.
Thank you. Hello, everybody.
Welcome. And last but not least, our third panelist is Dylan. Could you help me with your last name?
Kawalec.
Kawalec, who is head of developer relations at Vara Network. He was previously at B&B Chain Labs, Osmosis Foundation, and Discrete Labs.
Thank you. Hi, everybody.
Welcome, and thanks for being up here. Real quick, just so we're aware of the audience, who here is in crypto? Show of hands. All right, everybody. And who here is in AI specifically? Okay, so everyone's familiar. And anybody who's new to either of those industries or have been around? So everyone's experienced. Great. Okay, so we've got an audience who understands what we're discussing today. So real quick, if you wouldn't mind, each of you could give like a quick elevator pitch or one-liner for what each of your companies do. So everybody who isn't aware could be aware. So why don't we start with Alex on the end with Nexus?
Okay, well, first, thank you so much for hosting tonight's event and for moderating, and for the folks who put in the time organizing it, thank you. So Nexus is a layer one blockchain focused on verifiable finance. We use a zero knowledge virtual machine as a core component of the system, both for scalability as well as for security and privacy and other aspects of the system.
Okay, great. That was perfect. Thank you. All right, next we'll do Dylan with Phala.
Yes. Hi, everybody. I'm really grateful for being here, and thank you for the invite. My journey goes way back, and at Phala Network, what we're doing is providing the cloud layer, but it's a decentralized cloud layer for confidential compute. So you can think of anything from AI to decentralized Web3 services. We have decentralized the framework for clouds to have a vendorless platform, so we can go from one vendor to one vendor without any lock-in, and also decentralizing the key management so that all of the confidential applications run effectively autonomously. So we're here for the era of trustless AI, and we support privacy, and we run lots of zero knowledge things as well. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And last but not least, Adam.
Yeah. No, thanks for having me. Hello, everybody. I work for Gear Technologies. I'm based here in San Francisco. Our first product off of the Gear protocol is called Vara Network. We're a standalone L1. We're not EVM. Our tech stack's a little different. It's a Rust WASM substrate. So we're kind of built really for Web 2 devs. Obviously, you can leverage our smart contract platform for various DeFi, applications, AI applications, and if you're looking for performance and scalability, and some aspects of your chain being modular, Vara could be a good place for you. Yeah, thank you.
All right, great, thank you. Okay, first question, and I'll leave this open to anybody who'd like to answer. When we talk about trust in AI, what does that really mean in practical terms?
Yeah, it's a, good, I think, opener. I guess I would sort of start by saying, if we just kind of frame this conversation, right? So overall, right, AI as a new emerging area of technology certainly has captured the public's attention, but it's also come with a lot of concern. And if you look at the kind of data, both here in Europe and Asia, right, you have pretty deep skepticism within the public about the impact, societal impact of AI. And certainly as you kind of dig into the data to look at where those concerns are, cybersecurity is a huge area of concern, privacy is an area, but we see things like concerns over the impact to employment opportunities and work, as well as misinformation, disinformation, hallucination, right? All these become factors in why people are concerned about where AI is going and how it will kind of shape every kind of aspect of society. So I think it's important to just kind of step back and say that, at a sort of macro level, there is a lot of public concern about where this technology is going.
Yeah. Anybody?
Yeah, I would answer that with just being able to measure anything. So trust comes down to, evidence and not just proof, but more than just proof, like things that you can actually measure to prove how the prover even worked. So we want to get like very, very fine grained, not just on software levels, but on hardware levels so that we can measure, create a quote, and then be able to provide this evidence to others and actually be able to prove, not just using software to prove, but also using the actual hardware and where it's located, who's actually supporting it, who's actually funding it. And because organizations are going to decentralize themselves, they're going to be governed. And if we have this idea of trusting others, in San Francisco, we like to say it's trust me, bro security. So basically, I don't know who to trust in my brosphere. So I want to be able to verify it in a way that is extremely like precise. And that's why I'm saying measure. So measurements are going to be ideal. And what I mean by that, we can get into that.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think on that front, there's so many aspects to understanding like what is AI. I mean, people are using it now for Google, and now are we taking it for what it is? Where's this information coming from? As Dylan mentioned, that whole tech stack, not just the weights of the algorithm, but the transparency, understanding, the provenance, and we have a lot of questions to go through, so I'll keep mine short. But I think by the time you guys leave this evening, I'm sure you'll have a better understanding of what's going to go into this AI model and like what it really means to keep track of this global like information source. And I'll go to stop there.
Okay. So, Alex, you kind of touched a little bit into a follow-up question, which is, what are the risks if we don't address trust in AI? So you talked about hallucinations, you talked about other things. So like, what are some risks that if we don't address this problem, like as AI grows and spirals out of control, what are the things we could be facing?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can probably, I think folks here too probably have lots of ideas of areas of our economy. You think about finance, you think about healthcare, right? We have a lot of technology that we rely on every day that are critical to decisions we make, actions that we take as a business, things that governments are responsible for carrying out. And if we're relying on systems that are essentially black box, we don't have any clear understanding of the kinds of decisions or the recommendations they're making, then, or they make information that's actually incorrect, then yeah, it can have pretty significant impacts on like all aspects of yeah, how we live and work together. So yeah, I think it's I mean, we can get into some like specific sorts of examples, but I think at a high level, that's kind of where I would start.
Yeah. And so, yeah, you mentioned black box. And so,
I'll piggyback off of that.
oh, okay, go
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah. Like on the risk front, to sum that up, really comes down to like misinformation, right? Fraud, um, disinformation, legal challenges and problems, societal, and we're obviously seeing like these deep fakes. And so I feel like AI is it's cool to create things, but it could be very reckless. And then on the blockchain front, it's very slow and steady and boring. But I think AI brings intelligence to blockchain, and blockchain, brings some kind of transparency to AI, right? And it's kind of like the head and the body. I see that. But on the risk front, these components are going to have to obviously come together to make sure basically the guardrails. So if you're plugging in information and you're asking for, healthcare problems, supply chain logistics, legal, uh, questions and support, depending on your agent, yeah, there's a lot of risks that if you're not,
Yeah.
I mean, even right now on the development front, there's a lot of technical debt as
Yeah.
this vibe coding, but you end up doing a little bit more work. So it accelerates those that are mastered at engineering or kind of intermediate level. But at some point, you got to make sure you can verify or at least know where to do your due diligence once that prompt kind of delivers.
Yep.
I also think that the sort of, I'm sure everyone's kind of experienced this as you've worked with it, right? It's very much something that's telling you what you want to hear, right? It's not necessarily like your biggest critic in the way that the kind of UX and sort of kind of character of these chatbots and how you relate to them. And so, I've personally, gone in with an idea and been like, oh man, this is like the coolest thing ever, right? And then you talk to someone who's really a subject matter in that area of expertise, and they're like, oh my God, this is just complete garbage. Like,
Yeah.
you really don't know what you're talking about. And it's like, you wrote prompts thinking that you were asking the right kinds of, questions, you're trying to frame it in a way where you could really, understand the full subject matter, and it's not a replacement for that expertise, right? And so, I think that's one of the sort of near-term challenges that I see with this kind of sense that it's commercial grade,
Right.
robust, and something actionable. It's a little bit like, maybe this isn't the greatest analogy, but it sort of reminds me a little bit of like 23andMe and some of the, direct-to-consumer genetic testing where you would get these results and you'd feel like, oh my God, this is insane technology. But when you actually broke it down, there was really nothing actionable you could do with it, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't at the level of fidelity and robustness that it was meaningful in that kind of practical use. And I think there's a certain element of that with the way that these, kind of AI systems are rolling out certainly at a consumer level.
Yeah. And to your example about asking for information, but it's total garbage, it's just written so well and eloquently that it sounds like, wow, this is totally spot on, but really the source material isn't accurate, and so you get just well spoken or well hidden.
Right.
Like,
And how often do you take that and put it in your own chat bot? And be
right.
like, what do you think of this? And they're like, oh, this is really smart.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just a self-fulfilling,
That goes to your first question, like the trust in AI. Like, I think at some point, when you start leveraging AI, like as a consumer, or as even a developer or producer of these models, like accuracy is one of them, and like
Right.
robustness and making sure,
Yeah.
that it's coming out the way it should be.
Yeah, so Dylan got a little bit into like the verifiability. So what are some of the hidden trust dependencies that people don't think about when we're using AI?
Yeah. Well, what is a trust dependency, right? So anything that we absolutely rely on in order for some sort of workflow or an operation to work. So any kind of input, the process behind that input needs to be absolutely trusted. So what we say is that we're completely reliant on the cloud provider today to manage our data. It was actually funny. I was giving a story before about how I went to the CCS summit, which was the Confidential Computing Summit, and we were talking with Google, and Google came up on stage, and they were talking about their private AI and how we can help everybody in the world go to GCP. It's all going to be confidential. And there was one guy that comes up and he's just like, so can you confirm, like, if I launch my own private AI on GCP, that you're not going to steal my data? And then the guy, he's the head of engineering. He's like, the mic rings and he was like, I cannot confirm or deny the usage of your data and how we use your data.
Yeah.
And that's actually when everyone laughed. We were like, the trust dependency is actually the vendor. The problem is the vendor. And so we need to decentralize even our control to who do we trust.
Yeah.
So don't trust, but verify. And not even your friends, but also your colleagues. We need to literally trust nothing, because in the future of a dark web, realistically, it's going to be a AI autonomously owned, agentically owned, potentially even supply chain ran orchestration of many devices and many different controllers that are not going to be operated under your complete surveillance. And so when it comes to total surveillance, there are third parties outside of your peer review. When they offer privacy, they have the confidentiality to know what kind of privacy that means. And so when they give you privacy, it's your right. But when you take back your right to privacy, it's known as confidentiality. And that's not what they want you to have. So sorry for sounding so passionate, but like I have a problem with like people who don't think about this problem. So trust no one, verify everything, make sure that we decentralize the hardware, and that's our goal. And I want to be able to make that clear tonight, and we have ways to do that. So,
Yeah, here. Can I just build on that a little bit? Yeah, so I had a similar kind of interaction this time with one of the major large language model companies here in the city, and I was invited to come in and talk a little bit about some of these issues around security and confidentiality. And I was in this room with product leaders, and I got this very chilly response. Like I was kind of talking, and the body language was not like there, and after the meeting left, my host was walking me out, and he said, I have to really apologize for that kind of cold reception you got. He said, you have to understand, most of the people in that room believe that there will be an AGI in the next 12 months, and all the problems you're talking about related to trust, the AGI will be better equipped to address.
Oh boy.
I was like, wait a second, that's the most like circular set of reasoning I've ever seen here. But I think that also is kind of a core industry challenge that we have, is that for a lot of the industry, they've kind of put some of these issues of trust, confidentiality, risk management, compliance, they kind of put all of those to the side. And we have now essentially policymakers who've said, hey, we're going to be hands off. So, I think it's sort of created this scenario where there's really a vacuum in leadership over these types of questions that we're talking about in particularly the AI industry.
that's really well put. Yeah. They're not gonna defend you. They're gonna, if anything, they're gonna take your data before they even tell you that they took it.
And then call us safetyists on the way out.
And then blame it on you that you basically were thinking that, oh, this is just a chatbot. And the entire time they're taking and learning everything about you. And then Sam Altman tells you that he's going to use it against you in court. Oh, thanks, Sam. Like, then,
You knew that was
it doesn't make any sense. And so we're giving data faster than what we did in the Facebook days. And now we're doing it at 10x the rate. But now we're happily doing it because it's telling me how cats work and how dogs eat food and like things that I don't know. Because I think this is the trust dependency problem, is that we're over trusting something that was psychologically spun on the public as being something of danger and as something that was meant to fear. You should be afraid of it. What you should be afraid of is how they're using your data. And we don't even talk about data in the public. It's just like a misnomer. But if you knew how valuable your data was actually, you would be more inclined to know your right to privacy. But I think just in America, it's just like, it's a completely overlooked thing.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So we're now going to take a little bit of a more technical turn here. So we're seeing breakthroughs in AI and cryptography unfold in parallel, and are they connected? So these cryptography breakthroughs, ZK, all.
And these guys will probably speak better, but my 2 cents. Yeah, I mean they're both helping scale trust and verifiability with the ZK and integrating that with Web3. We have better technology, better infrastructure now, that we can apply these two technologies. I mean, they've been around a long time. Blockchain's been around forever. Cryptography's been around probably the same amount of time. But yeah, they do help each other in both aspects. As I mentioned earlier, AI is, reckless, and blockchain allows you to provide, the provenance there and kind of the data integrity. And we'll get into probably that ZK to the privacy and the confidentiality, and that's how it's going to work together.
Yeah. I'll come at it from the approach of like, what are we all building together, right? So we went through this era because I worked at Discrete Labs. We were working on the Monero project, if anyone's familiar with Monero, bulletproofs and this sort of thing of like private transfers. And then that kind of transitioned into sort of like private bridging. And then the problem with bridging is that then you have to rely on VPN providers and these like trusted third-party sort of co-processing actors that might actually end up just laundering money, and we don't even know what they're doing within that black box. So the problem with AI is that we also, when we talk about black boxes, we don't know what the data is actually doing. And like data in general, how it's being processed is the hallucination factor. So what a trusted execution environment can provide is literal measurements on how to prove what the prover is doing. So if we're going to be measuring weights using zero knowledge machine learning so that we can prove like some kind of tokenized asset, but then how it was distributed or how it was learned, or how something was verified. The awesome thing is that TEEs can provide you an exact measurement of how the TEE processed, say, some rollup or say some bulletproof or hash. So cryptography is like just evolving because it's not necessarily getting faster, but the arithmetic in terms of arithmetics and how information alone is actually being manipulated. And now that you can manipulate information, you can create new structures. And so mathematicians are going crazy recently in Stanford because they have found new constructions in quantum mechanics. And it's quite exciting because now you don't rely on just hardware alone, you can rely on information theory alone. But then how do you privatize information? So that's actually where the beauty of ZK and then also TEEs come together is that now you can protect something that was once not private, now you can make private. I think the assumption is that zero knowledge is inevitably private. No, you have to make it private. There's something called a witness accumulation statement, and that is actually not private. You have to send that in, and then it gets revealed. And then who reveals it is your trust authority, or your co-processor. So we have to do two things. We have to get better at who we trust, and then we have to get better at how we actually enable the hardware so that we can measure what we're proving. And I like to say that that's proving the prover.
So on the hardware, how do secure enclaves like fit into that?
On hardware, sorry, repeat the question.
Secure enclaves.
Okay, yeah. So like a secure enclave ranges, right? Like there's so many. But like it really starts with like software guard extensions made by Intel. And so there are TDX as well. There's trusted domain extensions. There's also the ones that AMD is also creating, SEV. And they range in terms of how they actually create what's known as a measurement. And then these measurements are effectively compiled, they're hashed to be turned into a quote. And so these quotes can do certain things, like they can verify the operating system. So if you're running an AI and you know how an AI gets downloaded and used on the CPU, not the GPU, but actually the CPU, those models, you can distinguish the difference between a GPT versus a Gemma versus a Qwen versus a DeepSeek. And so TEEs can actually distinguish the difference of what the AI is, rather than just saying, oh, run my prompt. It will instead say, here's an attestation that proves this is GPT. Because how do you know when we all upgraded to GPT-5? Well, like what GPT am I using now? It'd be nice to know that like if it's gonna spend $3 of my credits, but it's secretly doing GPT-4, it's kind of sucks.
Right.
So I'd like to not just get
Yeah.
data rugged.
Yeah, that makes
Yeah,
a lot of sense.
so TEE is Trusted Encrypted Enclave, right? So that's what that stands for. And all of us, like everyone here has got like a iPhone, right? Apple's implemented TEEs or secure enclaves like within the system, right? So that certain functions, when they're performed, are done so in a confidential, secure, protected part of the hardware. So that if the system is compromised, then that information remains encrypted. Is that
Yeah.
helpful?
Yeah. That,
Um,
yeah, that explains.
did I define the acronym correctly? I don't know.
Trusted execution environment.
Execution environment. There we go. Yeah.
Environment.
I like encrypted. Well, one thing I was going to
encrypted.
It is, yeah. One thing I was going to say though, that's kind of interesting, sort of that intersection between cryptography and AI. You know, I would say, especially like in blockchain crypto, there's not a whole, like if you go to OpenAI or Anthropic, there's very little kind of interest at the moment in implementing decentralized infrastructure. It's starting to emerge, but I think what's really exciting is that the crypto industry, Web3, blockchain layer one type companies have been very active in integrating AI and utilizing AI capabilities in consumer-facing products and services. And I think what it's going to do, and I think we're already starting to see this, is that the amount of commercial activity coming from this sector into the AI sector will be kind of the first signal to the AI companies that this market matters to them, because they're going to see the amount of volume. Like as soon as we get into things like agentic trading and agent-based activity on chain, to the extent that we're utilizing these kind of, more traditional Web 2 AI services to power those, that's commercial activity that those AI companies will take note of. And I think that will kind of thaw some of the sort of industry discomfort that sort of exists between the AI sector and the crypto sector. But I think we're starting to kind of see some signs that those industries are becoming more open to, or at least that AI is becoming more open to partnering and working closely with crypto companies.
Yeah. Great. Next question for Adam. How do networks like Vara help create ecosystems where AI can be more reliable and accountable?
Yeah, I mean, I think Alex just kind of mentioned some of it where we're talking about the black box too in AI and centralization, right? Kind of the overall arching nemesis here, and how do we just decentralize that into the cloud, into storage, into compute? That's kind of been worked on for quite some time. AI obviously is now coming into the scene, and I think more L1s are going to be leveraged for that decentralized aspect, the censorship resistance, all of these kind of key pillars that Web3 offers. For Vara specifically, yeah, I mean we're built for performance and security. So if you're leveraging these basically on the heavy compute side, like we could manage a lot of that computation on chain, or if you want to keep it off chain. Obviously it's a settlement layer, and I think, as Alex said, like down the road, our chain could be leveraged for these agents in terms of like reputation, staking, kind of the incentive layer for agent to agent, and then everything will be settled on chain. And all of these questions that we're asking about the guardrails, the risks, will be transparent. And yeah, that's how Vara, you could leverage Vara for
That's
the
cool. It's almost
the
like a
infrastructure.
framework.
Yeah.
It's like a framework for AI.
Very cool. So what are the trade-offs of building verifiability into AI? Like, does it slow things down or make it more expensive?
Could be both.
It's a 7% overhead to be exact. Yeah.
7%?
It's exactly
Oh,
a
that seems
7%.
low. That seems
Yeah.
low to me, but
So it seems
Yeah.
like we should do it. Why not? Which industries do you think will benefit most from verifiable AI?
Healthcare and policy making any policy, governance in general. And I think just like AI plus DeFi is a really, really cool thing because at Phala, we see a lot of this. It's just, I think it's like sort of the go-to. But the cool thing about what we're able to do is on the framework side, sort of the hardware side, is provide an environment that's the black box for the private keys now. So that's sort of like the problem is how do you use the private key, but then give users the ability to import or export, said private key. And that's the nice thing that we get to play around with is that now when you add confidential compute to then the DeFi layer, then you get to co-process things that you couldn't do before, like in just a traditional MetaMask. You could never use somebody's private key unless they're actually signing it away, right? But then if you give the user the ability to empower themselves with an environment in which they could trust the environment with the private key, I mean, then you get to have an agent run wild and realistically turn it into like things like Truth Terminal. If anyone's ever heard of this, it's basically your pet rock that gets to post on Twitter on its own, and it thinks like you, acts like you. It's like an Eliza OS, but it actually signs transactions on the blockchain, which is interesting. So your digital twin, right? I'm talking about the idea that your digital universe is really just more of an agentic kind of cloud-based control. But a lot of it actually is local. So you want to be able to localize your inference and have a trusted yet private model that caters to you in the cloud. And that way you have this sort of a protected environment between you and something that's outside of your control. I see that being really kind of like a killer retail use case, because then doctors, right? And then going back to the healthcare is then they're going to say, okay, well, I don't trust anybody with, my private AI. It's funny because I don't know if you guys watched the Joe Rogan podcast, but just recently, Matthew McConaughey even said this to Joe Rogan. He's just like, I really want a private AI, but it's just my data. And I was like, oh my God, we got to post it on Twitter. We got to like tell people about this. So there's a bigger need, not just for actors, but healthcare providers. And like, I think everybody wants to know that if they're going to trust their digital twin, which should be your best friend, then if your best friend gives all of your darkest secrets away, then it's not your best friend. And I think that's a good way of putting.
I think I'd use an agent if it was Matthew McConaughey.
All right, all right, all right.
LIVI.
Yeah.
Actually, we have some features on like that framework as well. Gasless and like signless transactions. It gives permission to like an app developer to give the consumer the right to have a period where they can transact. So you don't have to sign every transaction for for everything that you're doing or that your agent's doing, but you can put these parameters around it. So, you can have like a reservoir of tokens that they can spend, an allotted amount for a period of time, or your agent can sign transactions for like a specific, for your travels or work, or in healthcare, maybe that's something more specific in terms of that patient, appointment, and you can let things kind of slide. And really comes down to like these features we embedded in the protocol is kind of on the Web 2 side. Like how can we abstract some of this technology or the Web 3 out of it so that you or your agent can function? And I'm sure we're all aware with the wallets and how hard, you got to sign everything and make sure you have tokens to pay for gas. So we kind of abstracted that for some of these use cases to flourish.
Very cool. I know I'm the moderator here, but I am going to do a quick plug for what Edge and Node and the Graph is doing. So we are contributing to this by bringing verifiable data at the indexing and query layer. So the Graph indexes and is a protocol for querying data off blockchains. So one of the main areas we're working on is verifiability of the data. So there's provenance. You know that the node that gave the data to you, it matches what is on the blockchain itself. So that's one piece of this whole pie is that not only computation, but the data that it's working on is coming from a verified place. So we're also working on this alongside you guys. So how can companies experiment with verifiable AI today without completely changing their systems?
Well, I mean, we have a open source zero knowledge virtual machine that you can download and set up on a machine and power it with the compute that you have locally. And you can, anything written in Rust, you can implement and kind of see what it's not super fast, but it'll give you something to start with that you can work with. We also implemented MCP implementation related to the use of that as well. So it has some AI capabilities.
Very
So
cool.
that's something you can go to our GitHub if you just go to nexus.xyz. That's at least something you can experiment with.
For us, it's the D-Stack. So this is an open source collaboration done by our team, as well as with Flashbots and Nethermind. And we're proud to say that we recently did the whole handoff. We got 17 out of 17 votes. That included TikTok and Meta and like everyone at CCC. So that means basically the framework was open source, handed off to the Linux Foundation, and our claims for it being a sort of a decentralized vendorless framework that can also was audited at the operating system level is now open source. So it's awesome because it comes with several APIs that could literally get you up and running as a bare metal server. So you could basically become your own cloud platform in a sense where you could deploy your own AI and also know what the operating system is running. So everything compiles to Docker. It could be Python, it could be Rust, it could be C, it could be like anything. As long as it can compile to Docker and it can compose onto the image, you're good. So we try to make it really easy. And now I think that's going to be a really nice developer experience because that's the problem is like, does anyone know how to set up an MCP server? Like actually? And like also building tools for one too in a verifiable way. So that's what I feel like is coming next for us is just verifying the tools of AI on an MCP server. And then MCP servers are going to be like all over the place. You have Hugging Face, you have all these different, everyone's going to have a registry. And so everyone's going to have a registry. You're going to have to look up all these different tools, but then you're wanting to what about the tool? You want to know its reputation. You want to know if it's verifiable. You want to know if it's stolen data in the past because like people will just run transactions through it and be like, this is fine, and then and know that they're just getting get reg pulled. So that problem hasn't gone away. Is people are going to trust something, 1,000 people are going to trust it at the same time, and then they're all going to get crashed, and then there's no way to verify who did that, right? And that's the problem. It's who's setting up the server and then who's hosting these services if they're going to be decentralized. Then how do you verify trust? You're going to need attestations. So that's what the DStack has done. It's an open source framework for you to verify everything from the hardware to the software.
And the question was integrating AI into companies.
Yeah, how companies can experiment today without changing it.
Like incrementally. And then I think, yeah, the middle, like the infrastructure now is coming around. So, and it depends on what vertical we're talking about. How are they going to use it? Because you also got to, if it's going to be like on the legal aspect, the healthcare aspect, supply chain, oil and gas. Um, and yeah, incrementally. And that's kind of always, I remember in 2018 when we were chatting with a lot of corporations at that time, the Shells, your Budweisers, your Rolls-Royce, they were all leveraging it in some capacity, but they were kind of just testing it out. But at that time, we knew like the banking system and everybody's already spent millions and millions of dollars on their infrastructure, these legacy systems, that there needed to be some kind of bridge between what we're building now in Web3 and what they have, and how can you make that seamless. And that's kind of come around now that we're in 2025. So yeah, I think to implement and integrate it now is much easier.
Yeah. So looking forward, like 5 to 10 years, what role will decentralized networks play in AI agents and autonomous systems?
I'll just say like it'll be the backbone and we've kind of just talked about it for the last half hour. Um, It's going to be the verifiability layer, the incentive layer. How is your agent? At some point, you're going to want that agent to act on its own, and that's what we're talking about: privacy, confidentiality. And that goes to payments. And now we got stable coins. These things are going to be able to. I think what Web3 brings ultimately is like composability and interoperability.
I think
So,
another term is observability too, because
y-
everything is
yep, yep.
transparent.
And you're going to need that for it. So was the Web3 component, the decentralization aspect will provide like the robustness, the accuracy for, AI to operate with or without, you're manually, it'll be autonomous and
Yeah.
that's how I think it'll probably operate. I mean, even down the road, I even think robots, that's where like the currency is going to kick in, the tokens are going to operate. You're going to jump in a Waymo, it's going to accept a payment. The payment from Waymo is going to go to the garage and like get gas on its own, and it's going to exchange in kind of, this software.
I know
So,
we're all bullish on this. So do we think agent economies could become more valuable than traditional economies?
what do you guys think? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so too.
Agent GDP is going to be huge because it's going to be able to do, everyone knows what Wall Street Bets is. Okay, like everyone gets a Wall Street Bets. So it's a platform that distributes market share, not just like, hey, marketplace, hey, this is where you're going to host your agent, but this is like, hey, you want to do what everyone else was doing at scale. Here's a platform where 50 people get to also do the bets and also get to make bets on Twitter or on Reddit. And hey, this is the easiest workflow way in which we can automate the entire process of how to go from no token to some token. And you don't know how to do the Genius Act? That's fine too. Just go from zero to hero and apply to the Genius Act, and it's just going to mint you stablecoins. So these workflows are going to be engineered. And then there's going to be like this sort of precise moment after AGI comes around where it's going to learn about these new inference models. And then these workflows are going to be embedded in inference. And then AGI is going to be learning based on workflow inference. And then, yes, then you're going to be able to have something that's able to orchestrate entire supply chains. The only problem is that it's going to orchestrate it in a way that is almost non-scalable because yes, sure, it could build out all of these pipelines, but the problem is that over, I think, 81% of chief information security officers, they do not trust the way that data is even being managed by AI and the data pipelines that AI is using right now. They don't trust it. Over 95% of all consumer electronics are going to go into the AI direction. That's already a given. But the thing is that 68% of them have already leaked data. Literally just the other day, I got something from like my credit union that said, "Oh, yeah, your social security number, yeah, that just got hacked." So AI can't solve the cybersecurity dilemma. It's just going to cause worse and worse problems for us. And I think we're going to slowly, I really hope this happens, but I hope we curve into a world where people realize the dangers of AI are getting so advanced that we're going to end up having to rely on cryptographers and cryptography and the safety of zero knowledge revolution realistically. And that we're going to be able to use and enable people with privacy tooling because it's the only defense against artificial intelligence and then how it's hosted and where it gets deployed and then how you verify these systems. It's going to be more prevalent now than ever because then people are not going to have any solutions. There's only going to be a fraction of a percent, I think, of people who are going to have access to truly confidential data. And you're just not going to be one of them. And I think that moment is coming where everyone's data is going to get leaked because AI is so extremely strong. People get their data taken away from them. It gets exposed. Deep fakes are already on the rise. And so it's going to be more apparent that your data is actually being taken. It's already being taken. It's just that you don't even know it. It's happening in a black box, but it's going to be apparently obvious. And this is where I think a lot of people are going to expose that truth. People impersonating your face, your AI on a Twitter or something like this, or on a Twitch, and then they're going to look exactly like you, convince your mom that you need to send $500, and then a new type of AI scam are going to just be more and more and more prevalent. So that's how the public gets more and more aware is it when actually AI starts targeting people, and then people are going to want security solutions, and they're going to also want confidential AI solutions, and that's going to be the next thing. So I think we're on a roadmap towards safe AGI by 2027, because by that time, That's when it's going to be so advanced that people are going to be begging for solutions, because it's just going to get out of hand. That's my prediction.
Yeah, it's typical that humans require like some kind of like crisis before they're like, forced into change. And so it might have to come to like some major calamity before people are like, yes, we need this stuff.
Seven banks already collapsed, and we still have
Yeah, it's true.
banks. So.
Yeah.
Let's ask actually on the demand side, like I think we'll just be forced into like a crisis where we're going to be forced into it, or you think there's going to be demand? Because we already know we're giving up our info with Web 2 about 25 years ago, and we still do it. I remember like our parents like, don't give out your social. I can't even walk into 7-Eleven where they're asking for it just to get a pack of smokes or something.
Yeah.
But we like continue to go down this path.
Yeah.
And oh yeah, so my question is, do you think the demand will be there, or are we gonna have to force this kind of technology onto the consumer?
Well, we live in San Francisco, so I think a majority of the people here are I think technology aware, right? But then if you ever go to like a country or just like another state, like my mom lives in Florida, so I go to Florida just to visit her, and you ask anybody there, and they're just like, "What's AI?" It's facts, like you know it too. So they don't even know what it is, and they're already scared of it. And so when I'm already pitching to them, "Hey, do you want confidential AI or just like kind of what we have?" They're like, "No, confidential AI." It's just subconscious. What they're being sold now is what we're pushing in front of them. For the last 2 years, it's like we've been saying to the people, when I say we, I mean any AI developer is trying to push this narrative of just do it, just use the AI, just like buy our AI. It's the next best model, it's the next best thing, and it's just money, 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 money. It's really the problem. And then when it comes to like the greed factor, how do we all come together and say, okay, we're all being too greedy. Let's come back to center and like decentralize or confidential, make more confidential tooling or verifiable hardware. And then that's when I think VCs are going to be like, yep, now is the time to pivot because I'm bored of AI. Now it's time to move into this sort of new sector of AI that we get to sell. And I hope that comes sooner, right? Because it's already a necessity. It's just I would like to see it happen now because as a data aware person, and I think as people who are in San Francisco who are aware of it, that's my question to you guys. I don't know. What do we all want, right? It's really a choice. It's what do people want, but it's also what we tell people. It's like this is what you get, but then do you want it to be a certain way? So it's our belief that we need to just start off with saying that zero trust architectures are sort of like a bare minimum requirement, and it's just a defense in depth strategy actually. But the zero trust movement is actually going to start ramping up. It's predicted to grow over $60 billion. I think that number can be higher, technically speaking. That's
Okay. We're just gonna wrap up with the last two questions here. So, is this even possible? How do we build an ethical AI framework? What does that look like? Does anybody want to? Is that even possible?
I mean, I think there are lots of teams working on that. I think, one of the challenges is that first, you actually need to have people who care on the development side, the engineering side, and the corporate side. And like I mentioned earlier, I think there's a real, problem in leadership from the policymaking side, but even venture capital side, right? I think there's very little interest in slowing down adoption by, building product that has some of the kind of protections, that building in ethics to a system is going to basically create friction to market adoption and growth, right? And that's, I think it's unfortunate that the mindset is, oh, that's a secondary business opportunity that we can invest in companies that fix the problems that we're not going to fix now. So we win twice, as an investor. But that is sort of the mindset, unfortunately. So it's pretty hard to try to, especially, if we're like in Web3 or if we're startups, and to think that you can have a concept of an ethical system and alone be able to propagate that throughout the the
Yeah.
industry. I mean, I will say, like, I spent about 10 years working on professional codes of ethics in science and engineering.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there are maybe 200 or so codes of ethics that, you know, probably, you know, anyone here who studied engineering or computer science, that should have been like core material that you received as part of your training, that this is a professional standard of ethics, and, you know, harm to the public is being, no, you know, not doing anything that creates harm to the public is like maybe the first or second, you know, plank in every code of ethics. But, you know, none of that is really part of the instruction or the educational curriculum. And so, you know, we're just, I think we have gotten to the point where, I mean, it used to be like in, you know, biomedicine or in genetics, right? You had the community would come together and define these kinds of things and voluntarily build them into how those areas of science evolved. And I think in this, you know, in this era, it's just not fundamental to the ethos at all, right?
Yeah.
So I guess I sort of would net out by saying I have a pretty low, you know, level of confidence that it's possible to
Yeah.
create a framework for ethical AI.
Yeah, and even in the name open AI, you could almost like equate open being ethical, right? Like it's open, transparent, but yet we found that that wasn't necessarily the case.
Yeah. Well, even
So-
just like open source in AI, it doesn't actually mean the same thing that it means in
Exactly.
traditional open source
Right.
development, right? So, so even in that, we've kind of shifted away from standard development practices that you think would create more trust, transparency, and so forth.
Yeah. All right, last question. If this panel can predict the killer app for verifiable AI, what would it be?
Oh my gosh. Well, I think here's an interesting one. So right now, our financial system operates on the basis of audits, attestations, and assurance that is done point in time by third parties, right? That you couldn't come up with a more antiquated way in the 21st century, powered by AI, to think about how do we get confidence in the systems that we're using, right? So I think the killer app is going to be in actually utilizing these tools to kind of create more of an adaptive assurance model that is able to understand assurance at the real-time level. And I think that will unlock just a huge amount of inefficiency and cost that we have today in this manual audit world.
All right.
I'll be quick. As I mentioned earlier, I think I always think of like Minority Report, where like that, you know, he's walking through the mall and it's like reading his retina, and the advertisements are all like, well, how are your pants that you bought last month? And like the cars that they're operating. That's kind of my vision. Because even when or when Web3 crypto came out, we were trying to like plug this um, technology like into things that we're used to using. But really, like nobody predicted Airbnb was going to give up their house or your car for Uber, or streaming was going to be a thing, right? We thought Blockbuster was probably the best thing ever. Um, and so I see this technology like nobody predicted that, and kind of that's where my vision is around robots and hardware, and all of this shit's just going to be on chain. Some of it's off chain, but AI is going to be inference to, you know, detect who you are. You're going to jump in a car and it's going to know who you are. It's kind of scary, but I think, you know, long term, that's kind of where I see.
Yeah.
I will only say that I think that there's a really cool possibility that AI can use CPU and tokens from the CPU to prove how mining works and prove how hardware or prove how runtime works. And so I think AI could actually be used as a tool for energy conservation. And I think there could be extremely amazing ways of picturing and monitoring data in ways that we can't even imagine on how to do energy conservation. I think that's going to be the #1 use case is like worldwide um, uh, thermal imaging and figuring out like from a satellite's point of view. I'm really excited about like how satellites and AI come together to figure out what's on the planet and also like looking into the ocean and looking at like what our Earth just is. And I'm also excited to see what it could do for like the James Webb Space Telescope and just to see how humans can get faster, better, easier access to the actual stars in the universe and like figuring out how to use geometric data that's artificially created, but it's based on real analytics because a lot of the problems that we're having in like device to device location and locality and like even routing for edge computing has a lot to do with proof of location. So there's like really cool research done for how AI can solve the problem of proof of location besides using zero knowledge proofs, just using data alone and then how that works. It's really interesting. Yeah, I think and the other thing, last thing is just AI plus law makes a lot of sense. I've actually had a really good friend who recently got all the way to the Supreme Court alone. No lawyer, no actual person helping him. Got all the way to the Supreme Court just using ChatGPT the entire time.
Wow.
So and he was not dumb. Like he's a smart guy, but extremely awesome like test case study of a guy who openly admits that this thing is actually the strongest legal attorney sort of assistant that he never thought he needed, saved a ton of money. And I think people who want to create businesses and need to figure out the legal framework and the policy framework, I do think though, like that industry won't get enabled unless there's like confidential and private processing for every single person. That also deals with insurance agents. Like there's competitors, agent to agent competitors. And so like how you use the data versus how the competitor insurance guy is going to use the agent. They're going to mix the data, but then you're going to want to be sure to aggregate and make sure that the data is private and confidential to one party to another. So just like with remittancy with banks and like how banks don't like mix and mesh money, balances and all these things are taken care of, the same is going to be true with how data is managed in the AI. But then how do you manage the AI and within a hallucinative black box? My strong opinion is that the way to solve that is using remote attestations. And so remote attestations in the science and research based on hardware alone will be able to measure precisely how AI modeling and AI weights and training and fine tuning will also basically be more performant. So that I'm excited for the research side of these things.
How about energy? Where are we going to get all of our energy from?
Bitcoin.
We got to find out. I think this will like spur some energy use cases as well, alternative energy, because we need a lot of energy for this stuff.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you all. And I want to make sure to see if there's any questions from the audience we could take. Okay.
Hi, thank you so much. I really appreciate this. My name's Anna. I work for Gathered, which is a digital twin for IAM. But my background, I used to run the data centers for Facebook. I worked in programmatic ads. So the questions I'm asking is more about the future. Is one, hitting on your energy. It takes 10 times as much energy. Not only energy, but water. We need 7 more gigawatts in California. We won't have that. We're not going to do nuclear power. So that has a bottleneck. The other bottleneck we're seeing is latency. Latency for crypto is significant, especially if, let's say, we're doing A2P with Google. You're going to look at sub 10 milliseconds. We can't do that right now. And then we need a passport for data. And how do we do backtracing and allowing for that to come forward? And then my third is the third bottleneck I'd like you guys to touch on is quantum computing. We're hearing that as we move forward, when we're getting into the qubits, there's a possibility that it'll actually destroy crypto. So water, quantum, and latency.
You touch on quantum really quick. Yeah, this is crazy, but zero knowledge proofs are Stark proofs are actually quantum resistant if you go above 512 bits at least. But the problem with zero knowledge is like where it's computed and the side channel resistance that you can provide to an actual prover framework alone is actually the most important thing. So you have to be extremely aware of how to do defense in depth on the actual framework that's supplying the actual Stark prover, like RISC-0, which I think is going to be a roll up, even for Ethereum. I think Ethereum, a lot of Ethereum is going to be moving into RISC-0. There's also, ideas of SP1 and Zecco and a couple of others, but realistically, zero knowledge is quantum resistant. You can, in fact, provide a secret ephemeral witness data within zero knowledge. And what's the nice thing is that ephemeral witness data is like a Shamir secret. It's known as lattice-based proving. So you can create a problem that's so hard it creates problems for even the prover. It's called learning with errors. But then if a quantum machine is going after something that is a dense lattice, it's going to have like an immense amount of data that is effectively error. It's like you can imagine like a big green bar of like all possibilities and then a big red bar of all the errors that it also has to suss through. And so quantum computers, they're going to have this like bilateral bit and then they're going to have to go through years of actually the end of the universe in terms of time in order to kind of compute through all these life cycles. And there's only going to be a few computers. And from what I heard, maybe less than 10 years from now, we'll even see a hint of some of these types of attacks. So people say that it's closer and that it's right around the corner, and that industry has it. Like I'm still waiting on the MZM chip, and Microsoft is supposed to be saying that it's going to be breaking Bitcoin by the end of this year. How Bitcoin is broken is because the Trezor wallet sucks at encrypting the actual keys in the wallet. Not that the Bitcoin hash is actually flawed. It's just it's cryptography. It's a direct hash. You can't break something that has like n polynomial time resistance on the actual hash above 256 bits. I think it's impossible. If a quantum computer can solve private key witness sharing between public and private key data, that's effectively when it breaks cryptography, not just zero knowledge proofs. Zero knowledge is much harder. Break RSA, then you're getting closer, but you still have a plethora of other schemes and construction sets that you're going to have to break. And people who are in quantum are going to be able to mix and match a bunch of these different theories like we've already have. So I don't think it's ever going to be possible.
I want to address the latency question. So actually, EdgeNode is working with Coinbase and Google on a scheme that we're going to be announcing at Build ETH. So hopefully you'll come. Build ETH is going to be here on October 6th, October 9th. Yeah, it's an all-day event. There's a lot of speakers. The focus is on agentic payments, X402, et cetera. So we'll be making an announcement there, but there is a solution for the latency. So sub microsecond, sub fraction of a cent payment solution. It's coming. So, and then
Energy? I'm not sure.
yeah, let's solve energy here tonight. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Next question. Why are we here? You had a question?
Actually, real quick, there was
Yeah.
I'm gonna butcher it, but I know AI does obviously it takes all this energy. That's the question. It also might help alleviate certain aspects that required a lot of energy. And I don't know exactly what sectors and what verticals, and I got to go back to. I saw this talk, and that's what they were talking about. So I got to dig a little deeper. Sorry. What do you think?
I think the reason why you're seeing like agency Linux Foundation at that all the plugins are starting to work together is because we're not going to have enough GPUs, we're not going to have enough water. We have only 0.01% of potable water on the planet, and we are seeing that there's 7 trillion tons of water per data center. We need 14 trillion tons just to make a chip. So we won't be having it. That scalability that you guys mentioned and the adoption, it either has to go where we're doing qubits or doing something where we're using different lithium niobate. Right now there's no way to scale it.
You're right. It's hard to scale, but I also think it's because of how policymakers set up their supply chain vectors on terms of attack. So if you let your enemy know where you are and where you need resources, it's much easier to actually come after you or to take or to remove resources away, resources that you need. Since there is a limited supply, the demand is high. But then if the demand is high and then everyone knows where the distribution is going, you can cut off chains of distribution. The problem is the supply chain attack. I think like if you solve the supply chain problem and you can also make sure that the data in supply chains is also private and how distribution centers to supplier is able to say like find other resources or find external resources that not humans but AI can actually solve for this problem, which is sort of what we were just kind of touching on, is like how AI can actually help problem solve resource distribution and supply chain management, and then do so in a confidential way so that people don't use that data against you or redact resources when you need them the most.
So, and that's where AWS is really your data centers right now. I mean, so we have all our data centers in East One, but right now, we're shutting off data centers. At least I know at least we shut them off in Arizona and Georgia because we run out of water. That means we have 90,000 hours of oil or natural gas to use for when we generate it. So it's not distributed. It's not it's site selection. So there's no water. It's just unless we figure out how the GPUs are ready to buy takes 10 times as much electricity and water. We're using the same data centers in carrier colos and hotels. Liquid cooling is needed because rocks melt, but it takes more water.
Right. And that's why the other half of the conversation is that maybe most of the AI becomes local, and that there are solutions to do trust-based but trustless-based assumptions on who's actually using the CPU credit. Like I was explaining before, is the research behind how to utilize local resources to prove the actual AI credit versus because Google doesn't trust you with their AI, but how can they give you their AI and have you run it? Is I think the kind of the key question is so that you can prove and operate your own sort of as Ethereum, you can prove and operate and mine your own data, just like with Bitcoin and other sort of staking networks. AI in terms of the use and the utility of a private AI model that can still be used in a local way, but then using cloud only for inference is a new type of topography that people are looking into. Uh-huh.
But so when you're doing training, have 80% of your power. When you're doing inferences, you have huge spikes. So last week we had a level 2 nerd alert because all of the data centers are starting to do inferences, and that is just killing our grid. Level 3 means we shut off the power for the whole United States. Level 2 means, tell us what you're doing. Data centers and the grid, the power plants can't handle inferences. They can handle training.
Yeah. Sounds serious. Yeah, let's take this offline.
No, literally, I experienced my internet shutting off like all week. Like San Francisco, I don't know if anyone's noticing that, but all week. Okay, everyone in here. Yeah, all the internet's like getting shut off out of nowhere. And it was funny because some of my friends at Northwestern, they were actually saying, or sorry, Georgia Tech, they were saying how they're like, oh yeah, like it's because Facebook and all these other people, they're removing and moving resources. And I'm like, whoa. So that's so true. I don't think there's an answer. I think there's just going to have to be new ways of leveraging an AI. I think it comes down to just resource management and protecting resources in supply chains. There are resources that are available, and then it's a combination of also conserving energy using AI and using the best practices of how AI can actually reduce heat, reduce energy waste, right? Control. And then it's another proponent of like human resources and making sure that we can actually leverage AI in a local fashion, and then relying less on the cloud, relying more on trust-based but zero trust assumptions. So
That's right. We'll be the batteries.
Just turn the light off when you're done brushing your teeth. Yeah.
All right, you got a quick question? Quick. Okay.
any positive reception when you're speaking to either the large companies or you're not feeling like there's an appetite for regulation. And I guess I have contacts that are aligned in states that are actually like responsible, for example, for killing off the big beautiful bill with respect to barring regulation. So I will say there is an appetite, and because I'm in this area and like I love to have friends in the area. It'd be good to connect, kind of hear sort of like what your guys' thinkings are, and make sure that we're working together in terms of having these conversations with the people that are actually open to it. So we're setting the conversations and those tables and informing people. And like my background is like math and computer science, but I also pivoted into cybersecurity and law. So we're talking about, hey, like how can we even look at what a framework is? We're looking at it, at least with our company, from the perspective of international law. So there's legal norms that are generally agreed upon. And one of the products that we're looking at doing on the nonprofit is a legal sandbox. So not only can you see what is possible to do, and so lawyers and policymakers can look at it, you're able to inform on the opposite side for people who are working on the more technical side, like these are international norms. And you're saying like, oh, well, these like, professional policies, whatever, but really making that, bridging that gap, having like a unifying perspective to actually get done, which I agree with you, is actually necessary. So I think it would be amazing if there was some kind of collective or way we could all get together and like kind of, talk about this, make sure that we're approaching this from that perspective, because I will say on our side, we're pretty strong on the government relations aspect, and there is an appetite. People are looking to do it right now. They care about IP, they care about data, they care about privacy. People in Europe, people in Republican states, and it's happening right now. And so it feels like it's the time to seize.
Amazing.
Yeah, there's a group called the Decentralized AI Consortium. Michael Casey, the former editor of CoinDesk, is running that. And he has brought together kind of a coalition of companies working on decentralized AI, blockchain, Web3, and it's international. They kind of meet at all the big crypto events. They usually have a dinner.
Where there's people who just won't touch the Bay. They don't want to talk with companies here. They feel like you don't get them, they don't get you, and whatnot. So bridging that gap for people who will not touch, companies that they see as being traditional, or if we're looking at blockchain and Web3, there's also companies and governments that just like won't touch that either. So really kind of trying to make it bridging that kind of gap, where there is ironically a trust gap between people in the Valley. You're saying you go and talk to other people, they say, what is AI? Okay, well, Dr. Faith A. Lee is saying she wants to have those conversations. She wants the person who's in Arkansas to have a say about what their rights should be in AI. So bringing them into the conversation. And then also people who are in decentralized finance, actually making sure that people are connecting with them, and it's not just a conversation like within the community. Because there's these like silos that are seemingly coming up, and it's like, I'm not finding that there's no communication,
Yeah.
So
This is, I think, a huge area of need. So yeah, if
Really well said.
Yeah, definitely connect after. Yeah. Great. All right. Well, thanks everybody for coming. Thank you, panelists. If it was a success, feel free to chat after and mingle and have some drinks.